Welcome to Sisters in Crime Murder Monday, where authors talk about their crime craft. My name is Jacq,
Thanks.
and I'm a bibliophile, copywriter, podcaster, and member of Sisters in Crime Australia, where we've been celebrating women's crime writing since 1991. And my guest for this month's Murder Monday is Nicki Thornton, the award-winning children's writer from Oxfordshire in England, known for her wonderful magical mysteries. Hey, Nicki, how you going?
Hi there, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Fantastic having you. So we'll give a little bit of a rundown. If people aren't familiar with Nicki's work, in 2016, Nicki's debut middle grade magical murder mystery, The Last Chance Hotel, won the Times Children's Fiction Prize. Her novels have been nominated for all sorts of awards, including the Carnegie Medal, the Crime Fest Best Crime Novel for Children, the Specsavers National Book Awards. She's been described by Waterstones as one of the most original children writers around, but that's not to say as an adult you can't read it, because you can, because they're awesome. And Nicki now has 5 incredible books under her belt, sold in 15 countries. Her 6th novel, The Floating Witch, will be published in 2024. Nicki, would you like to give us an elevator pitch for the latest crime novel, The Poison Pie Mystery?
The Poison Pie Mystery. So, yes, thank you for those very kind words. It's I'm celebrating my the 5th anniversary of the publication of The Last Chance Hotel. So it's a big year for me.
Yeah.
Can't believe I've been 5 years since my debut. The Poison Pie is the latest one. All my books are set in a world where magic exists, and sorcerers do not always behave as they should. So there are magical police and magical detectives who are particularly skilled, because crimes committed using magic are quite difficult to prove. So in this one, there is a boy called Oakmoss Hornbeam, and he suspects that he's the unluckiest boy in the world, but there is a black cat called Nightshade who is rather proud of her magical detecting skills, and she suspects he might be under an ill wishing and that someone is actually trying to kill him. So they go on to a bit of an investigation with Oakmoss's magical family, non-magical family, and his non-magical friends at school, and trying to identify what's really going on with the Hornbeam family.
It's fantastic. Okay, so we'll get to the questions. And the first question is, who are your writing inspirations?
So I am a big reader. I don't remember a time when I didn't read. So I think it's one of those things, all those books, they kind of just go into your brain, and sort of I always think of my brain as being a bit of a compost heap, really, because everything gets sort of mulched down. So I have inspirations going back to childhood, which definitely involved Agatha Christie, definitely involved Roald Dahl, who has magic in his stories. And I ran my own bookshop for about 12 years.
Oh, wow.
And one of the big things I did was it was just when I started my family. We got really into going into lots of schools, and really had our shop was very much about getting children reading. And I probably pretty much had only read adult authors for a long time, and suddenly I was like reading all these children authors. So now some of my favorites are people like Jonathan Stroud, who did Lockwood and Co.
Yes.
And Skullduggery Pleasant. I don't know if you've ever read the Derek Landy books.
Love Skullduggery.
I was reading those thinking, adults don't read these books. And I think that sort of idea of magic and supernatural crime definitely came from reading those books. Yeah.
Fantastic. What started you on your life of crime?
My life of crime, I think, was probably I think a lot of people. I was just at the Crime Fest convention at the weekend, and there's so many crime writers, and I think that so many people, if they enjoy reading crime, probably get to a point where you think, oh, I'd love to write one of these. And because I think crime is deceptively easy and enjoyable to read, I think you sort of think, oh, this doesn't look too hard. But somebody did tell me, after I've been trying for a little while, particularly trying to write crime for children, which has its own really massive challenges, as you can probably imagine. Someone said, oh yeah, writing crime is really difficult, particularly if you write that sort of traditional murder mystery, closed circle of suspects. You have to disguise things but put in clues. They said those are the most difficult books to write of all. And I just thought, yeah, but they just read so easy, don't they? How can that be true? So, but once I've started, I'm the sort of person who thinks I'm going to crack this. I'm going to find a way to do it. So it has taken me a while.
And it actually leads straight on to the next question, which was totally random. I'll have people know. What are the challenges in writing for kids?
Well,
or what's
this
the
was
one?
Actually what I think that the difficulty probably is the fact that my editor is always sort of, we did disagree a little bit about how clear you make things for children and what they're going to pick up on. I do feel children are really careful readers.
Yeah.
But she's always saying to me, oh, you need to make this a bit clearer. I've also got magic in my books, and she sometimes, oh, I think we maybe need a bit more background to how this particular magic works. So could you explain that and expand on that a bit? And she goes, oh, and your word count, you're 10,000 words over your word count. So could you also cut it by 10,000 words? So the editing process is a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Do you check what you've written with children before submitting to the publisher?
I did used to do this, but I think it's one of those things that fundamentally, when you move from being a sort of a writer who's writing to try to get published to having an editor, in the end, it doesn't really matter. The most important person is pleasing your editor. So I don't tend to get other people to read it anymore.
There's very wise words there, very wise words. Who is your favourite crime character?
So I do have many. This is the trouble with reading so much. And, I think every school event I ever go to, people always sort of ask me like what my favourite book is. And I really do not have one. So favourite character is probably slightly easier, perhaps, because they feature in more than one book. But I do, I still find that reading, I still reread some of the Agatha Christie's when as real comfort reads. But I think it's probably skullduggery these days. I just think he's just a brilliant invention. So he's just brilliant. Yeah, I love him.
He's got that touch of larrikin about him, doesn't he?
It's just everything about him. He's just super cool, but he's dead. How
what more do you need
to say?
What is the hardest part about being a writer?
I think again there are many parts where you sort of there are lots of bits which are very, very enjoyable, and I do love writing. I do love putting it all together, but tying it all up so it kind of all does tie together in a really satisfying way is incredibly challenging. And I've not written a book yet where I know everything till really close to the end, so I always have to sort of, there's that feeling of just keeping going and having that faith that suddenly those last pieces of how exactly it all falls into place, I just have to have faith that it's always worked before. And I do usually find, oh yes, that's the last bit, that's how the last bit falls in place. But I can never, my books are too complicated, I can never work them all out beforehand. One of my dreams is to become a plotter and just get it all worked out So I do not panic my entire writing journey thinking, I don't really know. I don't know how they're going to solve this one.
And who did it? We don't know yet.
Exactly. I've changed who done it before as well, because sometimes as you write, you think, actually, I've come up with a better idea. So, you know, your ideas, I think this is probably why I'm not, everyone assumes that if you write crime fiction, you have to be a plotter, but I barely know anyone who is. And I think it's because as you get into the characters and you get into the situation you've created, your ideas do kind of evolve a bit, and they hopefully they always like, oh, I've got something better to write. Yeah.
Does your main character, so does Seth or Nightshade ever surprise you?
Yes, definitely. I think again, it's one of those slightly weird things, particularly as one of your characters is a talking cat. In my head, they are real. So, you know, they do sometimes sort of just go their own way, really. And sometimes you put in bits and you think, oh, I don't think Seth would really do that. You don't want to make, you know, I think that it's you do have to let them lead the way quite a lot, I think.
The next question is, what is your writing routine? Or do you have one? And if you do, what is it?
I'm quite I do feel before as a bookseller, I was a journalist, and I think that whole thing of it's a job, and you know, you have to write. You can't turn around to your news desk editor and go, oh, the news wasn't really with me this morning. You know, there is no front page story. Wasn't in the mood. So I do think I do sort of have that thing of like just you know, just doing it quite a routine way. And I definitely am a bit of a write in the morning person. I can write better in the morning, so my afternoons tend to be more about my you know, emailing and marketing and all those other bits and pieces that go with being an author. So I tend to write every morning pretty much, and I do have to admit that is 7 days a week as well. I'm quite, you know, I do love it. I just love doing it, getting up, going to my computer, writing a bit. That's what I love to do. Yeah.
Do you have like a minimum that you need to do or want to do or aim to do, or you just write?
I have a 5-5-5 rule, which is either I have to write 500 words or edit 5 pages for 5 days a week. And I feel that having that sort of, for me, which is quite a small target, I just always achieve it, so I always do more. So that kind of works for me, because sometimes you're not generating new words. A lot of the time you are editing, and so you have to measure things differently. And then sometimes, as with my books, it's not a matter of how many you write, it's how many you cut. So that's tough too.
Oh, how do you dig yourself out of a plot hole?
I think plot holes are inevitable. When people talk about writer's block, I think people tend to think, oh, you know, you don't have a big idea for the next novel. But I think writer's block happens almost daily, where you sort of think, oh my God, what is going to happen next? So again, I wish I did have a sort of answers to this. Sometimes it's a matter of getting away from the story, and I do run. So I usually write for a couple of hours, then I go for a bit of a run, and I do often find on the run, I then come back, and I've usually stopped at a point where I just think, okay, I don't quite know what's going to happen next. And then when I come back, I carry on, because I usually find that you know, it's a mixture of that sort of sitting down at the keyboard. Sometimes you get ideas, and sometimes getting away from it. And then there are some things which you do have to literally puzzle over, and that's when you have to rely on your amazing subconscious, where you just wake up in the morning and think, oh, I've solved that one now, you know, went to bed thinking about it.
Is that like, it comes to you in the middle of the night and you scribble it down, or do you actually wake up and think, yeah, I've got that now?
No, it's usually I don't do that wake up in the middle of the night scrubbing down, although I have done it. But yes, it's more of a case of I think that time, it's a really creative time between waking and needing to get up, and I find that that's quite a good time to suddenly think, you know. So I tend to go to bed puzzling on the bits that that I've got problems with, and then I think about them first thing in the morning. So
That's a great idea. The next question: do you start with the plot, the character, or something else?
I find plotting incredibly difficult. So the plot is the last thing I do. So I really shy away from plotting. I think I've heard people say, oh, plots, you know, no one teaches plotting because plots are sort of, you know, are just kind of natural, but they're just so not natural to me. So I usually start with a setting. And then I think, you know, who would be here, who would live here, who could I involve in the setting? So the characters come next, and what I would call the sort of the situation set up. And I think then from there, so I kind of know sort of what's happened and what is happening, and try to sort of give everybody a secret. And I think then at some point I start writing, and I'm having all these lovely scenes where all these sort of things are happening, and then I think I need a plot now. So that comes really late on.
How many drafts do you do before handing it in, or do you continually edit?
So I would love to have a really good writing routine, but I kind of got one which kind of works, because I have written a few books now. So, you know, you do get better. You don't get any worse. I think that's probably closer.
It's very reassuring.
So I'm a bit of a fan of what I call a draft zero. So when I am doing these things where I've got the setting, I've got some characters, I've got some snatches of dialogue, I have these scenes that start to build in my head, I just write those bits down. And what I try to do, I really try really hard to write those bits down, and then do the what happens next, and keep going forwards the whole time until I get to the end. And I try to stop myself going back and editing, because until I get to the end, I don't really quite know. So there's not much point. But I always know when I've got real problems with going forward, because I go back and start editing, and I think, well, there's no point, because this bit this scene may not even make it to the final book. So it's almost like the editing bit is almost like a bit of a comfort blanket, because I find the plotting and the forward action so hard. So yeah, I do have to like stop myself. And then once I've got to the end, then I have got a plot, I have got a whole story, and then I go to do what I would call a first draft. So that's when I do a proper first draft, and I do know what's happening. I know, so you can then, I just find it much easier to construct when you've got something. So I try not to, a draft zero is somewhere between about 20 and 40,000 words, so it does often get quite big. And then I do a first draft where I've got everything then is properly in place, and I try and structure it, and then I do another draft, and then it goes to my editor after draft 2, basically.
Well, you see, draft 2 doesn't sound so scary as, 16 or 17 or 18.
Exactly.
Draft 2 sounds great. It sounds wonderful.
Draft 2, but that's possibly because then my editor will come back with all sorts of questions like, well, this bit doesn't make sense. I'm not sure. The kids are not going to, that's a bit too scary. So I know that there will be so many changes. So it's kind of easier for me if it's not too perfect, because you do sometimes have to leave a lot of bits out that you would love to leave in, but it's part of a team process, I think. And it's and then you get after. So my main editor does what's called structural edits, so she will look at, sometimes you'll say, oh, you've got too many characters, you've got to cut something, this bit's not working, the pace drops here. She'll look at all those big picture things. And then after that it goes to a copy editor, and they will look at much more the detail of things, like if a joke could land slightly better by rephrasing it, or and then they will start picking up. I remember I had a boat in one of my books, and there was, he was questioning the position I had of where the driver was and where the engine was, and these kinds of things. And so it gets like more and more detailed as you go along, basically. So yes,
that's
those are just my edits before I send it in.
Wow.
It is really.
Well, we're now up to our final question.
Oh, okay, that was quick.
How would you get away with murder?
How would I get away with murder? I think I'd be incredibly bad at it, because I find plotting so incredibly difficult. So I think that I would just be the worst possible person. But I think one of the reasons that I really loved Agatha Christie is I do love her use of poisons. I'm sure everyone probably knows that she did work as in a dispensary, and I think she really did start to know a lot about sort of things like medicines. And often when she was working, you could buy arsenic over the counter and things like that. So she sort of knew a lot. But I'm a bit of a poison garden sort of a fan. I like the countryside. I quite like I've been known to do a bit of foraging from time to time, and I think it's amazing when you know about plants, that how many even things in your garden are really super deadly. So
wow,
I think that's probably the route I would go down. So
fantastic. Thank you, Nicki. I have to admit, we are big fans of Seth Seppi and Nightshade here, and really appreciate your time in chatting with us. Can hardly wait for the next installment.
Oh, it's lovely. Thank you so much. And thank you for such really great questions. It's been absolutely lovely. So thank you very much. I'm always I just such a big fan of crime fiction. I think it's just it's the genre. So I could talk about it all day.
So got the latest book so people can have a look. It's the Poison Pie Mystery. It's Nightshade story, so you can go get it.
It is a Nightshade. Nightshade takes the lead in this one. She's always felt she's a better detective than Seth. So so my editor said, why don't we give her a couple of books where she solves her own crime? So The Howling Hag was the first one where Nightshade solves the crime, and then the second one is the Poison Pie, and The Floating Witch is going to be another one where Nightshade takes center stage and tries to show off her detecting skills. So
fantastic. Nicki, again, thank you so much. Murder Monday interviews are available on Sisters in Crime's YouTube channel at 6 p.m. once a month on a Monday.